If you're navigating divorce or separation right now, you're probably feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, and maybe even questioning whether you can trust the very system that's supposed to help you. You're in the right place. This is the Soft Landing Divorce Podcast, where we prove that even in the midst of ending a marriage, you can move forward with dignity, clarity, and yes, peace. But here's what makes us different. Ken and Sarah are going to show you exactly how to achieve a stress-free divorce without time-consuming processes, even if you distrust the legal system. They'll share solutions and strategies that will open your eyes to things unseen by most approaches that can save you time, money, and emotional turmoil, but that the divorce industrial complex never talks about. Whether you're just starting to consider separation or you're deep in the process, our goal is simple: to help you and your children land as softly as possible on the other side. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive in as Ken and Sarah reveal what the industry doesn't want you to know.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Soft Landing Divorce Podcast. I'm Ken, and I got to tell you, I'm really excited about today's deep dive. We're talking about how no-fault divorce streamlines the separation process, and honestly, this is something that affects so many people, but there's still a lot of confusion out there about what it actually means.
Absolutely, Ken. And you know what? That confusion is totally understandable because let's face it, divorce law can feel pretty overwhelming when you're in the middle of it.
Right, exactly. So I'm here with Sarah Bates, who's a certified divorce specialist and the expert guide behind Naked Divorce Filer by DTSW. Sarah's got over a decade in family law. She's worked as a freelance law clerk, and, well, she basically lives and breathes this stuff. Sarah, when people hear no-fault divorce, what are they actually talking about?
So, Ken, here's the thing. No-fault divorce is really just a way of saying you don't have to prove that your spouse did something wrong to get divorced. Like, you don't need to stand up in court and say, hey, my husband had an affair, or my wife was mentally cruel to me. Instead, you just need to show that your marriage has broken down, and the main way to do that in Canada is by living apart for a full year.
Okay. So it's about the relationship being over rather than pointing fingers?
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head there. It's all about focusing on the fact that the marriage just isn't working anymore, rather than getting into this whole blame game of who did what to whom. And honestly, that shift makes such a huge difference in how the whole process plays out.
I mean, that sounds way less confrontational, I guess, but help me understand this. When did this become a thing in Canada? Because I imagine it wasn't always this way.
Oh, you're absolutely right. So, no-fault divorce became legal in Canada back in 1986 through the Revised Divorce Act. Before that, couples had to prove grounds like adultery or cruelty to get divorced. Can you imagine having to air all your dirty laundry in court just to end your marriage?
Oh, that sounds awful. So what changed in 86? Like, what made lawmakers think, hey, maybe we should make this easier?
Well, there was this growing recognition of just how emotionally devastating the divorce process was becoming. The original system was so adversarial and it was taking this massive toll on families. Plus, they reduced the required separation period from 3 years down to just 1 year, which, made it way more accessible for people who needed to move on with their lives.
3 years? Seriously? That's a really long time to be in limbo.
Right? And here's what's interesting. This change reflected evolving attitudes about marriage and divorce. Society was starting to understand that sometimes marriages just don't work out. And that doesn't necessarily mean someone's a bad person or did something terrible.
Okay, so let's get practical here. If someone's listening and they're thinking about this path, What does that 1 year separation actually look like? Like, do you have to be living in completely different cities or?
Great question. So, separation can happen in two ways. You can have physical separation, where you're living in different residences, but you can also have what we call under the same roof separation. This is where you're still in the same house, but you're maintaining separate sleeping arrangements, separate financial accounts, separate daily routines, basically living separate lives under one roof.
Huh, that's actually pretty practical, especially if money's tight or there are kids involved.
Exactly. And Ken, here's something people don't always realize. You're allowed brief attempts at reconciliation during that year, up to 90 days total, actually, without having to restart your separation clock. So if you try to work things out for a month and it doesn't pan out, you don't lose all that time you'd already put in.
That's actually pretty compassionate. Now, let's talk about the streamlining aspect, because that's really what we're diving into today. How does choosing no fault actually make the process smoother?
Oh man, Ken, the differences are pretty dramatic. First off, you're eliminating all this time and energy that would normally go into gathering evidence, finding witnesses, preparing testimony, all that stuff that goes into proving fault. Instead, you just need to document that you've been separated for a year and that's it for the divorce grounds.
So we're talking about less paperwork, fewer court appearances.
Absolutely. Lower legal costs because you need way less court time and legal documentation. The whole process is typically faster. We're talking about resolution in maybe 4 to 6 months after that separation period, assuming both parties are on board. And honestly, the emotional stress is so much lower when you're not having to air out every grievance in a public forum.
What about the kids? Because I imagine when parents aren't going at each other's throats in court, that's got to be better for the children involved.
You know what, Ken? That's one of the biggest benefits that doesn't get talked about enough. When parents choose no-fault divorce, they can maintain more amicable relationships, which is crucial for co-parenting. The kids aren't hearing all these accusations flying back and forth, and the whole family can focus on moving forward instead of rehashing past hurts.
That makes so much sense. Now, I'm curious about the practical side of things. What does it actually cost to go this route?
So in Ontario, a basic no-fault divorce costs approximately $1,155, and that includes court fees and document preparation. The court fees themselves are $669, split into 2 payments, $224 for filing the application and $445 for the divorce hearing. Now, if you can do an uncontested divorce where both parties agree on everything, you're looking at the lower end of costs.
And if things get messier?
Well, contested divorces can get significantly more expensive due to legal fees and extended proceedings. But here's the thing. Even contested divorces are generally less expensive when they're no fault because you're not spending time and money on proving wrongdoing. You're just focusing on the practical stuff like property division and support arrangements.
Speaking of support, can you still get spousal support with a no-fault divorce? Because I think some people worry that not proving fault means they won't get the financial support they need.
Oh, absolutely, you can get spousal support. And Ken, this is super important for people to understand. Spousal support eligibility is completely independent of your divorce grounds in Canada. The court looks at financial needs, ability to pay, length of the marriage, current income, future earning potential, all these financial factors. Whether your divorce is no fault or fault-based has zero impact on support entitlement.
That's really good to know. What about the actual process? Like if someone's sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds like the way to go, what are the steps they need to take?
All right, so first off, you need to make sure you meet that 1-year separation requirement. Then you're going to complete and file a divorce application with your provincial court. Include all the details about your marriage, separation, any arrangements for kids or property. You'll pay the court filing fees, get a court file number, then legally serve those divorce papers to your spouse.
And then what? Just wait?
Pretty much. Your spouse has a response period, usually 30 days. You might need to submit additional documentation if the court requires it, attend any mandatory hearings or case conferences. But honestly, Ken, if both parties are in agreement, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of couples work with a family law professional or mediator to help navigate this and make sure all the legal requirements are met.
Now, here's something I'm wondering about. What happens if one spouse just doesn't want the divorce? Like, they're not on board with this whole thing?
You know what? This is one of the key advantages of no-fault divorce. Once you've established grounds by living apart for that 1 year, your spouse really can't prevent you from obtaining the divorce. So if you're the applicant and you meet the requirements, the other person can't just say no and stop the whole process.
That must be a relief for people who are in situations where their spouse is being difficult about it.
Absolutely. And look, it's always better if couples can work together and reach mutual agreements, but sometimes that's just not possible. The no-fault system recognizes that and doesn't trap people in marriages that are clearly over just because one person won't cooperate.
Let's talk about some of the concerns people have raised about no-fault divorce, because I know there's been debate about whether making divorce too easy is actually good for society.
Yeah, that's a really interesting debate, Ken. Some people argue that no-fault divorce makes ending a marriage too simple, and that as a society, we should be encouraging people to fight harder for their marriages. The concern is that if divorce is too easy, people might give up too quickly instead of working through their problems.
I can see both sides of that. What's your take on it?
Well, I think it's important to remember that divorce is never actually easy, even when the legal process is streamlined. People don't make the decision to end their marriages lightly. And when a marriage has truly broken down, forcing couples to go through this adversarial process of proving fault, it often just creates more damage for everyone involved, especially the kids.
That makes sense. And I imagine by the time someone's been separated for a full year, they've probably already done a lot of soul searching about whether the marriage can be saved.
Exactly. That 1 year separation period isn't just a legal requirement. It's actually a cooling off period where couples can reflect on their relationship, try counseling if they want to, maybe even attempt reconciliation. So by the time they're filing for divorce, they've usually put in that effort already.
You mentioned earlier that most divorces in Canada are granted on a no-fault basis now. Do you have a sense of just how common this has become?
Oh, it's become the standard approach. The vast majority of divorces in Canada go through the no-fault system because it's quicker, easier, and less expensive than fault-based divorce. People have figured out that they can save themselves a lot of time, money, and frustration by taking advantage of this system.
Now, for someone who's listening and thinking, this sounds like something I might need to consider, do they need a lawyer or can they handle this themselves?
That's a great question. Legally, you don't need a lawyer to file for a no-fault divorce, but I always recommend having some kind of professional guidance, whether that's a divorce lawyer, a mediator, a certified divorce financial analyst like myself, or even a family law paralegal. Having someone who knows the system can help protect your interests and avoid costly mistakes.
Even in situations where everything seems amicable?
Even then, yeah, because there are always details you might not think of. Financial implications, tax considerations, pension splitting, stuff that can really impact your future if it's not handled properly. Plus, a professional can help make sure all your paperwork is completed correctly, which can save you delays and headaches down the road.
What about mediation? I know that's something you're passionate about. How does that fit into the no-fault divorce process?
Oh, mediation is fantastic for no-fault divorces. While it's not required, it's highly recommended because it creates this cooperative environment for resolving disputes. A qualified mediator can help couples reach mutually beneficial agreements on property division, child custody, support arrangements, all while maintaining better relationships between the parties.
And that's especially important when kids are involved, right?
Absolutely. Many Canadian courts actually encourage couples to try mediation before going to litigation because it often leads to more satisfactory outcomes for everyone. Plus, it typically costs less than traditional court proceedings and speeds up the whole process significantly.
So, as we start wrapping things up here, Sarah, what would you say are the key takeaways for someone who's considering this path?
Well, first off, understand that no-fault divorce is really about focusing on practical solutions rather than assigning blame. It's faster, it's less expensive, it reduces conflict, and it allows families to maintain their dignity and privacy during a really difficult time. The 1-year separation requirement gives you time to be sure about your decision, and the streamlined process lets you move forward with your life more quickly.
And the impact on children seems to be a big factor too.
Huge factor. When parents can avoid this adversarial court battle, kids don't get caught in the middle of accusations and finger pointing. They can focus on adjusting to the new family structure rather than dealing with ongoing conflict between their parents. That's invaluable for their emotional well-being.
This has been really eye-opening, Sarah. I think a lot of people don't realize just how much the legal landscape has evolved to make this process more humane.
You know, Ken, that's exactly what it's about, making the process more humane. The no-fault system recognizes that sometimes marriages end, and when they do, we should focus on helping families transition with as little additional trauma as possible. It's not about making divorce easy. It's about making it fair and dignified.
So, as we wrap things up, here's what I want everyone listening to think about. If you're facing the difficult decision of whether to end your marriage, remember that the legal system has evolved to support you through this transition. No-fault divorce isn't about giving up easily. It's about recognizing when a relationship has run its course and providing a path forward that protects everyone involved, especially the children.
And remember, you don't have to navigate this alone. There are professionals out there, mediators, financial analysts, family law experts, who can help guide you through the process and make sure you're making decisions that set you up for a positive future.
Thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us today, Sarah. And to everyone listening, if this conversation has given you some clarity about your own situation, that's exactly what we were hoping for.
Thanks for having me, Ken. And remember, everyone, the goal isn't just to end a marriage. It's to create that soft landing we talk about where everyone can move forward with dignity and hope.
So here's my final question for all of you out there. What might you do differently now that you understand how no-fault divorce streamlines the separation process? Are there conversations you need to have, professionals you should consult with, or maybe just a sense of relief that there are options available that prioritize your family's well-being?
That's the perfect question to leave people with, Ken, because understanding your options is the first step toward making the best decisions for your unique situation.
And on that note, keep those questions coming. Stay curious about how you can create the best outcomes for yourself and your family. And remember that even in difficult times, there are paths forward that can lead to healing and new beginnings. Until next time, keep moving toward that soft landing. Thanks for listening to the Soft Landing Divorce Podcast.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Here's the truth. Divorce doesn't have to be the battlefield you've been told it is. You have more options than the traditional system wants you to know about, and honestly, you're stronger than you realize right now. No-fault divorce reduces conflict, making your separation smoother and less stressful, which is exactly what your family needs during this transition. If today's conversation hit home, here's how you can take action. First, hit subscribe on the Soft Landing Divorce podcast, because these game-changing strategies could be exactly what transforms your family's future. Second, drop us a review. It's how other people desperately searching for hope find their way here. And if someone in your circle is wrestling with separation, share this episode. Sometimes the most powerful gift is showing someone they're not alone, and there's actually a gentler path forward. Everything you need, resources, show notes, all our connection links, is waiting in the podcast description. We're not just dropping episodes once a week. We're building a movement of people who refuse to let divorce destroy what matters most. Subscribe now because we're just getting started with what we want to share with you. Until next time, keep moving toward your soft landing. You've got this, and we've absolutely got you.